Why does teamwork matter in Pathfinder 2nd Edition? What's that all about? And does teamwork really make the dream work? If you dream about Pathfinder, then sure, but if that's what you're dreaming about, you got bigger problems on your hands. This is the Dominomicon, authored and hosted by me, Dominic. The Dominomicon is dedicated to all nerdy things, with my current obsession being the TTRPG Pathfinder 2nd Edition. In this video chapter, I'm going to look at 3 of the biggest reasons I think teamwork is incredibly important within Pathfinder 2e. Players in the system are all well aware of how important teamwork is, but not everyone, even people playing in campaigns right now, are aware of how and why teamwork is such a big thing. And maybe understanding this stuff will help you create future builds or give you a hand in combat, as in you think you know it, but do you really? If you enjoyed this teamwork-oriented Pathfinder video, please share, subscribe, hit that hype button if you've got a free one to spare this week. It definitely helps the channel immensely. And so let's grab a virtuosic teammate to start the music. So this one should be nice and simple. I'm just going to give you 3 big reasons why teamwork is so imperative in this system. We're going to start with combat role-oriented point, then a buffs, debuffs, and maths point, and definitely the bestest point in this video. And lastly, we'll go over skills and specializations. Let's jump in. Alright, tactical combat roles. Now, if you've played other tabletop systems, you might be used to the idea of building a character who is a total lone wolf. A one-man army who can run into a room, shrug off every attack, heal themselves if needed, and then nuke a boss into orbit all on their own. You can certainly try that approach in Pathfinder 2e if you really want to, but your GM is going to enjoy watching your character get absolutely slapped into the dirt by the encounter mats. I know I definitely would. In this system, trying to do everything yourself isn't just bad strategy. Cooperation is strictly necessary if you want to survive past, I don't know, level 3. The game is fundamentally balanced around a group of specialists filling distinct combat roles and working together like a finely tuned machine. That probably sounds like something you've heard before, but in this system, it's pretty much mandatory that you have these diverse combat roles. This is not simply a recommendation. Unless you really know what you're doing and can possibly survive without 1 or 2 of these roles, you need to have all of them covered. So what are these roles? There aren't official titles for them as far as I'm aware, but I see them like this. First up, we have the pure damage dealers, or what I sometimes call strikers. These are your barbarians, your rangers, your fighters, and gunslingers, etc. Their entire job description is to look at an enemy's health bar and make it vanish as quickly as possible, and they are very good at this. But here's the catch, the multiple attack penalty. This is going to make it so that they simply cannot attack over and over again, bar 1 or 2 exceptions like maybe the flurry ranger, and instead they need to do other things like position themselves for flanking or away from an allied caster's area effect, etc. Otherwise, that map is going to turn those subsequent attacks into sad, tragic misses, like all of my dating attempts. Still, because crits are so devastating in PF2e, strikers are incredibly good at lowering enemies' health, especially when they have help from their teammates, which we'll get to in a little bit. Next, we have the tanks and defensive characters. Now, being a tank in this system isn't just about having a ridiculously high armor class and sitting there like a stubborn brick wall. Monsters in PF2e are occasionally smart. If they can't hit you, they will simply walk past you and murder your squishy wizard buddy instead. Not every class or even creature in this system has reactive strikes, so enemies are indeed able to mostly freely move throughout the battlefield to murder all the squishies. So true defensive play is about action denial and punishment. Think about classes like the champion or the guardian. Their role is to control space and use the reactions to protect the team. When a champion uses their reaction to reduce the damage an ally takes and then gets a free strike against the attacker or apply a debuff, they are effectively disrupting the GM's turn. They make hitting anyone else a terrible tactical choice, forcing the enemies to waste their precious actions dealing with the heavily armored front line, and Guardians work similarly. The other thing that's relatively unique in PF2e is that high AC is not about not getting hit, it's about not getting crit due to how the 4 degrees of success work. If the enemy's only got like a 40% chance of hitting someone anyway because of the crazy high AC, the chances of them critting are much lower than that. And as crits are such a devastating thing in this system, seriously, enemies have crazy high attack bonuses compared with PCs usually, you need to have a tank that can either stop those crits from happening or try to take normal hits themselves. A huge chunk of my damage per round as a GM comes from crits. And then we have the support characters and debuffers, or controllers as I sometimes call them, which usually feature classes like the Bard or the Witch. These characters are the true unsung heroes of the battlefield. Their job is to manipulate the digital scales of the system system's maths. A support character spends their turn handing out status bonuses to their allies or inflicting debilitating conditions on the enemy. They're the ones turning a regular miss into a hit or a normal hit into a glorious maximum damage critical success. And again, because crits are so powerful in this system, this role cannot be understated. If you have a dedicated support character in your party, you aren't just playing better, you're playing the system on a much easier difficulty mode, like actually. And finally, we have the healers, which are usually clerics or oracles or anyone dedicated to the medicine skill. In some games, healing during active combat is seen as a waste of time because the numbers don't keep up with enemy damage. In PF2E, combat healing is incredibly efficient and mathematically powerful. When a boss inevitably rolls a nat 20 and chunks your frontline marshal for nearly 3/4 of their health pool, a single high rank heal spell can mostly erase that damage and put them right back in the fight. PF2E healing is unbelievably strong, and it's one of my favorite things about the whole system. Healers provide this crazy good safety net, allowing the rest of the party to take tactical risks without fearing an immediate trip to the graveyard. Or boneyard, I guess. Lol, boneyard. When you put all of these roles together, you start to see why teamwork completely dominates this system. The tank protects the support character debuffs the boss and buffs allies, the damage dealer capitalizes on those lower defenses and higher attack bonuses to land massive crits, and the healer keeps everyone standing when things go sideways because of lovely RNG. Take one of those puzzle pieces away and things start to fall apart. Some enemies have crazy high AC. Without a buffer or debuffer, your strikers are worthless against them. Some enemies are glass cannons, but without a healer to keep your strikers going and without your strikers taking them down before that glass cannon blows someone up, your party is going down quickly. And some enemies just want to target your back line, and without your tanks, your back line becomes a sad, pathetic memory. Like most of my past, actually. So trying to get through a whole campaign without having these combat roles covered is a pretty good way to get a TPK, and only some GMs will be happy with that. Hopefully that's combat roles explained to you, and with that out of the way, let's go into the most important part of this video. So this is where the mechanical beauty of Pathfinder 2e really starts to shine. Buffs, debuffs, and the math swing. So bonuses and penalties in this system come in 3 main flavors: item, status, and circumstance. Untyped also exists but isn't super common. The golden rule of the system is nice and simple. Bonuses or penalties of the same type do not stack, meaning you only ever take the highest value. But if they are different types, they stack together beautifully, like a trifle. People love to say that every +1 matters in this system, and while it sounds like a tired catchphrase, it's the absolute truth. Coordinating these types of bonuses isn't just a fun tactical exercise against a high-level boss creature or whatever. It's actually one of the best things you can ever do in this system. Let's actually look at a ridiculous 5-step practical example of how a coordinated team can stack these numbers together to create a massive math swing that turns a terrifying boss into a total joke. First, your support caster or charismatic marshal steps up and uses the demoralize action to look the enemy dead in the eye and frighten them. On a success, the enemy becomes frightened 1, and as a quick reminder, the frightened condition applies its value as a status penalty to literally all of the creature's checks and DCs, including their AC. So right out of the gate, the enemy has a -1 status penalty to their AC. Nice and simple. Next, your frontline marshal moves into position to flank the enemy, or your rogue uses a clever trick to get around their guard. This inflicts the off-guard condition, which slaps the baddie with a -2 circumstance penalty to the AC, and because it's a circumstance penalty and the status penalty from the demoralize are different, they stack perfectly. Just like that, the opponent's AC is plummeted by an effective 3 points. No one's even done an attack yet. But we are nowhere near done yet. Now, an ally decides to set up the party's heavy hitter by using the aid action. Thanks to the remaster rules, the baseline DC to aid an ally is a static 15, which is incredibly achievable as you level up. And from level 7 onwards, getting a 25 is incredibly easy. You just need to roll anything above a 5 usually. Let's say that they're a master and they get an easy crit success, so that's a +3 circumstance. This next step is where things get kind of ridiculous. Your party bard steps up to the microphone. Normally, they can spend a single action to cast the composition cantrip Courageous Anthem, which hands out a lovely +1 status bonus to attack rolls. But they want to turn this up to 11, so they unleash the Fortissimo composition focus spell instead. The bard makes a performance check against a pretty high DC. If they fail, nothing happens, but if they succeed, that status bonus to attack rolls bumps up to a +2, and if they critically succeed, it skyrockets to a massive +3. 3. Because this is a status bonus for your ally, it also works with the circumstance bonus from the aid check, and it ignores the status penalty on the enemy, allowing the mass to swing even wider in your favor. All of this stacks together. And let's say they get a crit success to make this even more fun. It's not that unrealistic, by the way. Finally, your party's fighter or gunslinger steps up to murder. These two classes inherently have a +2 because of the weapon proficiency versus every other class. It starts at expert rather than trained. So let's add all of this together. The enemy's AC is effectively lowered by 3 thanks to frightened and off guard. The fighter or gunslinger is getting a +3 circumstance bonus from the master aid, and they're getting a +3 status bonus from the bard's critical fortissimo composition, and you factor in the natural +2 proficiency advantage. When you combine all of this together, you have just manufactured a staggering +11 swing on the d20. I'd say that for most martials that aren't a fighter or gunslinger, you probably need to roll between an 8 or a 12 to hit most enemies. This means that unless you start flanking, etc., most of the time you're going to need to roll an 18, a 19, or a natural 20 to actually crit. But when you consider the fighter or gunslinger with a +11, that changes things a little bit. The maths here doesn't lie. For your standard unbuffed martial class who needs to roll an 18, 19, or 20 to crit, they're sitting at a clean 15% chance to land one of those crits. But when you pass that massive +11 swing over to a fighter or gunslinger, the degrees of success turns that d20 roll into something a little bit silly. With everything combined, a fighter or gunslinger needs to roll a 7 to crit. Let that sink in for a moment, just a 7. If that crit chance has gone from a modest 15 all the way up to a staggering 70%. And with how game-changing crits are in this system, with some weapons having the deadly and fatal trait, meaning that they potentially deal more than double damage on a crit, this explains wholly why every +1 matters. And even if they don't crit, the only way for them to miss is to actually roll a nat 1. It's crazy. And as a forever GM, using your team to set up crits like this is stupid, and I hate it, and that's why you should definitely be doing it. Okay, with some crazy maths out of the way, let's move on to the last reason why teamwork is beautiful in PF2E. Now, a common trap for new players, and honestly even some veterans who should know a little bit better, is trying to be a jack of all trades. Wait, who is this Jack? Why is he so good at so many things? Well, he's good at lots of things, but he's not amazing at any. Who is this Jack? Who is he? Sorry, right. They want the character to be decent at climbing, a little bit stealthy, kind of good at patching up wounds, be able to lie to a guard if they get cornered. But Pathfinder 2e is a system that actively punishes mediocrity at higher levels. If you look at the entire level 1 to 20 journey, a standard character starts with a few skill proficiency choices, but then they only get a total of 9 increases after that. That is it, just 9, and you get 10 skill feats also. Rogues and investigators are the obvious exceptions here. I think Swatchies get a couple of little bonuses as well, but for everyone else outside of feats you can take, your resources are incredibly limited. If you try to spread those increases thinly across all the different skills, you will end up being moderately trained in a bunch of stuff, meaning that you will completely fail to hit the scaling DCs of higher level challenges. Specialization isn't just a fun way to build a character identity, you have to do this to keep up with the challenges that will present themselves from your lovely and breathtaking GM. And because you can only max out a couple of skills to legendary, your party has to work together to cover every single pillar of the game. So I'm going to list off just a few examples of some of the skills and why it's so important to have a wide variety of them across the party, with each person specializing in up to 3-ish. First up is the absolute gold standard of party survival, medicine. If your party doesn't have anyone investing in this, you're going to have a terrible time. You cannot rely solely on your magical casters to burn off their precious top-ranked spell slots just to heal minor cuts and bruises between encounters. Although the Animist kind of ruins this whole thing because of Garden of Healing, but let's pretend it doesn't because it ruins my whole point, so shut up. In this system, medicine can heal up actual lost HP, both in combat and out of combat, though you need the skill feat battle medicine for the former. So if you don't have a medic in the party, you're really going to struggle outside of combat to actually heal up to full outside of relying on focus spells over and over and over again. And it's pretty hard in this system to keep going encounter after encounter without being mostly fully healed. Next, we have your charisma-based skills, usually handled by your bards, sorcerers, or roguey rogues. Being able to talk your way around people, or talk your way out of a jail cell, or completely trick a local noble is fantastic for the narrative, but they're actually even more important than that. Every party is always going to need someone who's good at diplomacy and someone who's good at deception. It's just basically mandatory in this system. If you want good prices at shops, you better have someone with good diplomacy, or you're really going to be paying a crap ton for any cool items. And you'll be selling your secondhand nonsense for peanuts as well. As for deception, I mean, we need to lie at some point, let's be honest, even if we only have good intentions. At least that's what I tell myself when I feel the guilt start to pour in. Also, Bon Mo exists as a feat that you can take, which can be used in combat for diplomacy lovers, and it's very effective indeed, once again, for your team. Speaking of forcing people to make bad decisions, like getting them to watch this channel, for example, let's talk about intimidation. We already went over the frightened condition, and quite frankly, that is reason alone to take intimidation. Plus, there's feats such as Battle Cry, which gives you a free check at the start of a fight to intimidate someone within 30 feet. Terrified Retreat on lower level enemies is amazing if you critically succeed at your check, because they start to run away. Intimidation is just fantastic, and it's something that I can guarantee you're going to get some use out of. As for the magic skills in this system, they're very good at identifying items, spells, and even identifying creatures. They're crazy good because knowledge is power in this system, like it is literal power. As soon as you use your recall knowledge to learn that an enemy is weak to something, or you learn what a magic item does, you've literally just gained power. I'm not going to go into depth into all the different feats because that's 4 different skills and it's, you know, a lot. Suffice to say, you need someone to specialize in some magic skills at some point, and you really should vary that up amongst the party because there are 4 of them. So when you look at all of these puzzle pieces together, the design intent of the system becomes crystal clear. No single player character can hold all of these tools. You simply cannot be the best at everything, like I am in real life. But when your party coordinates during character creation and says, right, I'm going to completely focus on medicine, you focus on intimidation, you cover the magical stuff, you create a flawless puzzle where every single blind spot is perfectly covered. You become an efficient, unstoppable machine where every character has a distinct, powerful role to play. And I think I've made my point there. Teamwork in this system is mandatory, and honestly, it's one of the best parts of the system. What's the point in playing a cooperative game if we're not working together? I honestly love any sort of gamer system that rewards players for working together, and Pathfinder 2e is so freaking good at that, and I absolutely adore it for it. And I hope I've gone into enough depth to help people understand why teamwork is so good in PF2e, and this hopefully helps people consider future builds and cooperating with teammates, because that's what PF2e is all about. That and killing monsters and stuff while looking fetching. I think that's gonna do it for this video. If you thought it was helpful, enjoyable, entertaining, enlightening, amazing, please give it a like and consider subscribing, sharing with a friend, and definitely hit that hype button. And if you didn't think any of those things, maybe you should add a comment saying that. I swear I have no ulterior motive by telling you to write a comment. A big shout out to my artist, Leandro Notado. Please take a look at the description for a link to his portfolio so you can commission some delicious art. And another big shout out to my members and archivists, Max Magnus 20019, Ozzy Smith, Nikolai Milenkovic, Kyle Travis, Bentfer, Apteryx13, and patrons and archivists Clash, Q, and Patrick O'Donoghue. But for now, this is Dominic of the Damanamakan, wishing you a fond farewell, and until next time, goodbye.